Hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor and spiritual guide, Victoria Shaw. And today you guys are in for a treat. We have a guest, Patrick Geary, who I've met through my dear friend, Robin Friedman, who will be a guest again on the show very shortly. Don't worry. She was a guest in our first season and she's coming back in January when her book launches. But Patrick is an amazing astrologer. I even had the opportunity to do a little service trade with him and work with him. And he's really magical. He is an alchemist, intuitive astrologer, and energy coach. He is a lifelong advocate for humanity from the UN to the universe. And today he helps people find more joyful, fulfilling, and successful ways to live on the planet we call home. Patrick works with individuals, groups, and organizations. He runs regular workshops online and in person, and he publishes monthly and weekly forecasts to help us all connect with the golden thread of opportunity. I love your bio so much, Patrick. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. My bio changes every time. Every time I have a conversation with somebody, I just tune into, well, what am I doing now?
I love that. I love that. That's the intuitive piece, right?
It's it, exactly. There's so many different things about us that could come forward. So why not give that a chance?
Love that. It's so beautiful. So, like I was saying in the little intro, I got to know you through Robin Friedman, and we did a little trade, and it was really fun and really. And what inspired me the most, Patrick, about working with you is the kind of playful energy that you bring to astrology. Because astrology can get really serious, I think, in the wrong hands. And working with you, you made it feel really fun.
It is fun. And I remind myself of that all the time too, that really the whole universe is a playground. We're here to enjoy ourselves. And these planets, these stars that we see up in the sky above us, they're also here in the playground. They're like playmates. So when I think about astrology, I think about having a play date with these awesome, impressive cosmic energies.
I love that. And he gave me this guidance when we did our trade, our session. He was like, go play with the planets. And I love that. And you can show your toy now. Well, let's just get it on the
Oh,
table. And then
yeah.
we're going to talk about his story. So he turned me on to these. There's, no affiliate link here, guys, but he turned me on to these amazing stuffies because I was sharing about my current infatuation with all of my stuffed animals. And I too am the owner. She's upstairs, but owner of one of these beautiful stuffed suns. And I have been playing with the planets a lot. And it's been such a fresh way of kind of understanding, remembering that everything in this universe is here. It's all part of us. We're all part of that. It's all here to support us. And it's fun. It's play. It's joyful. It does not have to be serious. And, my friends, I don't have any close friends that are astrologers, but I do have a lot of friends that are, somewhat astrology literate. And I was talking to a friend not so long ago about all the stuff in the plant and, in her chart right now, because she's got a lot of things going on and how she's going through her Saturn return. And then I was like, and, it's just kicking her butt. All these things are kicking her butt. And it made me a little scared. And I was like, uh-oh, we're about the same age. What's a Saturn return? Do I have one of those? And I do have one coming up. And so there's so much, and Mercury retrograde's another big one that a lot of people have heard of that one and get all scared when that's a coming on. So I think there's a certain degree of fear mongering that can happen with astrology. That's just so unfortunate because I think it can also be so empowering.
It really can be. And for me, it is the art of right timing, among other things. So if I think about something like Mercury retrograde and how in our society we really demonize it because we are so reliant on clock time and we're so reliant on these structures to deliver us in an efficient way from A to B. But sometimes that's not where the energy is pointing you. When I think about Mercury retrograde, sure, you're right. It's not a wonderful time if you want to do lots of logistical organizing and arranging because you'll probably experience that Mercury retrograde detour. But the deeper meaning of that for me is you have a chance to go over things you have already learned and connect more deeply. Like when I think about Mercury retrograde, I often notice I'm reading a book for a second time and it feels completely different from the first time. It's like if I were to highlight it, I would highlight very different passages, and the
Oh,
information I would gather and draw in would look very different. It's that neural repatterning that we need. With retrogrades, I think we're so often moving forward, and we get this pressure to move forward in our Western society, growth mindset, capitalism, you know the deal. Produce, 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 move forward, move forward, move forward. Any delay costs time, it costs money, it's negative. Versus that retrograde, which remind us well, oh, actually, sometimes it's actually more beneficial to go back over where you have already been because you probably missed some things. You miss some of that wisdom. You miss some of that insight. So now you have that chance to go a level deeper. You have a chance to smooth things out.
yeah, I love that. One of my astrologer friends years ago told me anything with the word is really good to do during a Mercury retrograde. Like revisit, review, right? Like anything that is like redo. Those are all good things. So I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that. I also find they're really creative times. I feel like it's a really great time for me. I'm like very creative during Mercury retrograde periods.
I find that too, because you are going back and accessing these pieces of information that just haven't been fully stitched together. So it's beautiful. And if you know the astrology and if you know what to look for, then it gives you a chance to appreciate it and to pause and to welcome it rather than to expect things to be going as they were going when Mercury was moving forwards.
Yeah, I love that. And in terms of the Saturn return, my friend, so I looked it up and exactly like where it is and where it was in my chart the last time I had it, which was the end of my 20s. And so I was starting to think, so at that period of time, I had a big loss. I left my career in academia, right? But I also got married, which was a great adventure. And I started my family. And I also started my writing career. It's when I like published books and even got my first big book deal. So I was like, wow, like we can perseverate on, oh no, Saturn return, loss, bad. But I was like, oh my God, there was so in that period of time, there were so many big beginnings and so many like important threads that I carry through to my life right now. And so I think too, but I want to hear what you think about it. It's like a lot of it is the lens that you look at this stuff through.
Oh, it so is. And with Saturn, especially, we can be taught to view some of the themes or topics that Saturn looks after with a lot of fear. And Saturn does look after endings or death in some way and noticing when a cycle is coming to a conclusion. But that's also an invitation into wisdom, and it's an
Right.
invitation to begin the next chapter. When I think about Saturn, I think about the blessings of long term, slow change. Like you mentioned, the things that were happening during your Saturn return, both some of those longer term projects that were coming to an end. And at the same time, there were these other huge chapters in your life that were opening up. And when we're in that window, it can feel compressed. It can feel like, oof, I don't know what comes next, or what am I going to do now that this is going away, or this isn't proceeding as planned. I'm getting a lot of no here. Saturn can give us no. But that no is ultimately just a redirection. And to me, it's a redirection also into responsibility, which is another one of those Saturnian themes. And we can have such a strange and conflicted relationship with responsibility in our society. I think there's a lot of ways that we either don't feel prepared to step up to the plate or that we may even be deceiving ourselves on what we're ready for. And Saturn will let you know very clearly, this is something that, yes, maybe eventually, but no, not now. Kind of think about my little kids who would love to get in and drive cars immediately, but there's no way I'm going to let them drive a car right now. It doesn't mean never. It just means you need to grow up first. You need to actually step into greater responsibility. And you might think they will insist. I guarantee you, they would insist I could totally drive a car. I'm absolutely ready for this. It's possible. But they can't even reach the pedals. So Saturn gives us that loving advice. I think of it very much that loving parental energy of, well, hey, just not right now. Or if this is something that you want, mature into it. Let
Mm.
the change arrive slowly.
Yeah, I love that. All right, I want to backtrack now because you've had an interesting story, right? You started off as a lawyer, a kind of a high-powered lawyer, and now you're an energy coach and astrologer, and I love the word alchemist. So, can you share a little bit about your own journey?
Sure. And I often get that question, people wondering about how can you move from law into astrology? And strangely enough, there are many astrologers who have backgrounds in law. And partly I think it's because we're looking at these big systems that have lots of
Mm.
moving parts and rules. And with astrology, it is a little bit like looking at universal law because you're looking at all of these characters. They each have their own energies. They're in interaction with one another. Then there's perpetual cycles and patterns. And you're taking all of this information on this high level, and then you're bringing it down through the fact pattern of somebody's individual lives to help them apply it, to help see, well, how does this actually make sense for you right now where you sit? And then for me, too, part of being a lawyer is being an advocate for somebody. So this is how I would see it. This is a way that you could understand this narrative. These are the choices that sit before you. I want to counsel you to make the best choice that's here for you, and I want you to be successful. I want you to get that great outcome. So, strangely enough, it actually has a lot of those similar skills: pattern recognition, creating narratives, logical structure. And then for me, the energy part really adds in that intuition because truly there are so many things that we could look at. And like when we had our session, I just felt things speaking to you. And I just got so clearly that message coming through. Tell Victoria, like, the planets want to play. They want to be here. We're right here. She needs to remember that these are living energies. So for me, there's also that listening that comes into it.
Right.
So it pairs that left brain part really well because astrology is a science. It's something that has been around for thousands and thousands of years in so many different cultures. It's observation. And because we know that there's a connection between what's above and what's below, we can now work with that. And that's that for me, it's that right brain component, that intuition that comes in. And that's really what woke me up to this bigger path is I was working for the UN and I ended up needing to take a summer out on medical leave because I was in a situation where I guess I could label it as bullying, but I often will invite bullies in to my environment when I need to make a change. So I did that. I kind of engaged in the same pattern that I long engaged in and brought myself to a position where I needed to take time out and I really needed to let my body rest and recover. And when that happened, this more intuitive side came in and really just let me know there's something more here, that deeper listening. So I think astrology also looks at like the mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of consciousness that sit all around us. So I love being able to sit in this place where I can work, with the familiar left brain structures and also with this higher guidance that's just flowing through us always.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you explained really well. I always say everything, anything that you're really good at, you're using your intuition. And I talk about like if you're a therapist, if you're a coach, if you're a lawyer, right? If you're a writer, in those moments when you are experiencing that flow, when you are really, really good at it, I firmly believe that you are connected with your intuition. And what you said, you're using those earthly structures, and some of us need more of them than others, right? You're using that as the grist for your intuitive mill, right? But you are not, but that's not what's doing the job, right? Your intuition is always the best guide that you have. At least this is what I believe. Your face is making scrunchies, um, but but that's and so like I love how you said that because I've been to a lot of astrologers over the year because I like astrology, and the ones that I really vibe with are the ones that they're not lost in the data or details. I actually pitched someone to be on my show, I don't know, like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and she was someone I was on her mailing list, and I really liked what she said, and but she was a little bit nervous because she didn't know who I was, and we got on a little pre-phone call. And she was very anti-intuition. She was a teacher of astrology, and she was like, yeah, I really tell people, like, you don't lead with that. Don't lead with that. Even if you have it, like, you have to look at the facts first. And I didn't end up having her on the show. No judgment. She is wonderful. I still get her newsletters and all that good stuff. But for me, that was a little bit of a red flag, especially because this show is about intuition. But it was a little bit of a red flag because I just see things the other way around. Like everything in this world is, can be in service of my intuition, and these things, like the stars they can point you back to what you already know, but they don't hold your answers.
I completely agree. And I think for me, that scrunchie is probably just a smile wanting to come
All
through.
right. I love that. No. So, okay. So what was it about astrology? So I love the parallels that you're making between the law and astrology. And I also love how you said astrology is a science, because many people in our world now, in our materialistic worldview paradigm or whatever it is, I don't even think it has that much to do with materialism, but a lot of people have this idea that astrology is this weird, crazy thing that has no basis in science, but it really is a very mathematical, it's a very ancient practice. It's been around forever. And it really is, there is a science to it. And for me too, my brain does not like, I love to receive astrology readings, but my brain doesn't work that way. Like it's way too mathy for me to like sit down. I would, I know that now you have all the programs that do all the work for you, but even still, my brain just doesn't work that way. But I love the parallel between that and law. I love how you're saying that, it's a science, because I believe it truly is. But, something else that I'm really curious about, what was it about astrology that called to you? And when was your first like little taste of astrology that got you excited? Like, was there a moment when you were like, ooh, like this stuff is really cool. Like I want to be more curious about it.
Well, when I was a teenager, I went through a period where I was really interested in all of the esoteric arts. So, palmistry, tarot, astrology included. And then at some point, I think it was right before I went to college, I just kind of shut it off and I was like, I don't really know about this anymore. And it wasn't a conscious decision. I just felt myself move away from it and moving into academia and the world that I was more familiar with and maybe the path I was expected to go on. And so again, when I mentioned this time I had this summer off, and that was the first time I had that amount of time off, truly off to just focus on myself. Probably, I mean, was that maybe the first time ever I really had that amount of time off? And as I took it and really allowed my body to process, to let go of a lot of the anxiety that I was holding on to rest, to really bring myself into this state of deeper listening, it just reemerged. It was through a podcast wormhole. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasters, Jenny Blake, who she was interviewing somebody, and I think he talked about astrology. And then I just followed this thread and then ended up doing these deep dives into astrology, listening to these very detailed conversations that professional astrologers were having about astrology.
Wow.
And I just realized the complexity of it. And I realized the beauty and the complexity of it. And as soon as you have that moment where you realize, oh my gosh, this is real, or for me, maybe when you remember this is real, well, then your whole worldview just suddenly shifts. And this is one of the blessings of being an astrologer. I get to be with people as they experience that sometimes, just the wonder and awe that, wow, my life is written up in the stars. How cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I often share the story that one of the biggest catalysts to the work that I do today, early in my own adventure, was an astrology reading. It was an astrology reading. And, she did this reading for me. And it was like someone had, you know, put together all of it was like she reconnected me with all the hopes and dreams and like things that I believed about myself, before I forgot them all, when I was young, and said, "Oh, this is your astrology. This is your destiny." And it changed my life. I still have this was a while ago. So I still have the little cassette tape, and I keep one little Walkman. Some of you may know what that is. So that I can play said cassette tape, because it was a life-changing experience. It really was. And it was also, she did readings at that point on my kids too. My kids were little. And I remember, sometimes it's easier for us to see too when it's somebody else being described. I mean, she nailed it. She nailed it. It was incredible. So, I mean, I was an instant convert. That was my first exposure to astrology, but I was converted instantly by just the accuracy. And, also a lot of it was what I wanted to hear. But she didn't know. I mean, she could have pulled anything out of a hat. She pulled that. It was very specific. It was amazing. So you do the astrology, you do, and I'm sure you have a lot of people that have these moments right through your work. where
They
they're just like,
absolutely
oh my
do.
God, you just handed me the key back to me.
Yeah, and I do a lot of readings for children too. When I worked for the UN, it was specifically as a children's rights lawyer. So I specifically do a lot with children, and children's charts are amazing because it is just this land of pure potential. And it's really taking this lens of how do we nurture and support this human being to really live as who they are. And that's what I want to offer to all of my clients is how do I nurture and support you as a human being to live as who you are? That's the best for everyone. The universe wins when you are living more in alignment with your authentic truth. And astrology is one tool that points us to that. So I think it's such an amazing thing that you had that done for your children so that you were able to see some of those gifts early on and perhaps also see some of the challenges that they might face so that you can be there with them and help them understand themselves. And even I think too, again, I've got young kids. When I look at their astrology, I think a lot about, well, what things are they going to like? What things are they going to be inspired by? What are they going to be interested in? This day and age, there are 1 billion activities that kids can go to. So just sorting through and recognizing, well, this is something that I could give them an early heads up and just see if this sticks, then they're really aligned from a much earlier age with what brings them joy.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I had that same experience. And I also feel, in the work that I used to do, I don't do it as much anymore, but I used to do a lot of parent consulting early on. And I think one of the things that is so helpful for parents that we don't realize that we need is to like put aside our own preconceptions and our own ideas about who our kids should be or, how we should parent them and get a sense of who our kids are. And I think, you're talking about this as a tool to really understand, some aspects of your child and who they are and how do they support them and how they are unique and different from you and every other snowflake in the universe. Right. I think it's brilliant and it's so important. So I think that's just absolutely stunning and beautiful work. And I also think some people may think, and I want to know what you think about this, that an astrology reading is okay, let me know my kid's future so that I can protect them and, make sure they don't walk off a cliff. And in my understanding, and you may have a different one, but in my understanding, that's not the point at all.
That wouldn't be the point for me. And you mentioned forecasting earlier, and that's one of the things I am very, very mindful about in any consultation is we're looking in the realm of possibility. We're looking at choices that somebody might make. I always want to respect somebody's conscious awareness and their free will. And that's even more so with children. I know that anything that I say as an astrologer, even if I give a disclaimer, which I do, to say, keep what's resonant, don't worry about what's not. I know that those words can have extra weight. So I'm very, very careful about things that I say. I don't want them to be determinative. I want it to be from this place of noticing rather than from a place of almost fatalism.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you also want to be general because there's so many different ways to live the chart, right? Like I remember the astrologer that read my kids the first time. She said, oh, yeah, like, he has the chart of an architect. Right. And so for a while, because I was very literal minded at this point, I was like, oh, should I be like guiding him towards drawing or architecture? And I can see what she's saying because my son is very he actually like has a really good sense of space and where things go in space. He has a very strong aesthetic sense, like how he dresses, how he sets up his environment is really important to him. Like, he just moved into his first, new apartment and while studying for the bar exam, because he cheater, spoiler alert, he's a lawyer, not an architect. But he moved to a new city, is studying for the bar. I'm sure you went through this at some point in your journey, so you know how stressful it was. But it was really hard for him not to have everything set up in his space because that is like how he functions, and he likes that. Like the aesthetics are really important to him. I've learned all these things about him, right? So I could see where some of that might lead an interpretive mind to go, oh, maybe architect. But you also want to be careful because for a lot of times, just in my own naivete, I was like, should I be guiding Julian to be an architect? And that's not the point, right? That's not what this is about.
No, it's not. And it is so much about recognizing the energy and recognizing the patterns. And then we get to choose how those patterns express.
Right.
So for me too, that's part of intuition is being able to read, okay, well, how is this showing up for you now? And how could it show up? And then also, this is why it's so joyful to sit in consultation with somebody because I might have this wonderful selection of information. They have their human lives full of the lived experience that shows how these patterns are coming to life through us.
Yeah. No, I love that. All right. I am mindful of time. And even though it seems like we've only been talking for 3 minutes, we've been talking for about 25 of them. What have we not covered yet?
Ooh, that is a great question. One of the things that's been really in my awareness lately is how it's a two-way street when we look at how we relate to the planets. That there's a famous axiom in astrology, as above, so below. And how I learned to relate to astrology was more from the prism or perspective that the planets are moving up in the sky, and as they do, we are moving in concert with them down here. So if Venus is moving into this place in my chart, I will experience this. And it's almost like Venus is giving me messages or it's sending me experiences that are coming down the pipeline from the sky. What I've come to appreciate as I've been playing more with the planets is that yes, Venus is there and it's helping me learn more about myself. Because again, for me, this is all about self knowledge. This is the root of power, and this is really what we're here to do. So, yes, Venus is helping me learn more about myself as it moves through the sky in this beautiful, elegant pattern. Also, as I live that, I am helping Venus learn about itself.
Aw.
So that's what I've really found so valuable that these planets are also going through their own evolutionary processes. Planets have souls, planets have consciousness, planets are awake and aware and alive, and we are in this relationship. So if I'm experiencing a Venus transit and I make a choice to move into greater love and connection with those around me, I'm also offering that up to Venus. And that helps Venus move into this brighter, higher expression of itself.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah,
That
it's so fascinating. It came to me in a conversation with somebody talking about the planet Uranus, which is so often associated with freedom and liberation and clarity. And I could see this shadow body of Uranus that was sitting around it. And that shadow body looked more like gaslighting. So sometimes when we have these huge, I was talking to my friend Cynthia Sue Larson, quantum physicist, amazing person. She studies reality shifts where people have these sudden shifts moving from one space into another. So she studies things like bilocation, teleportation, but even simple things like lost objects or things changing color or moving around. We've probably
wow.
all had experiences like that where I know I had my keys there and now they're not there. What happened? So that's a very Uranian experience when you have a surprise or something suddenly shifts or something changes. But then if you try to bring that out into the world, and I think this happens a lot with intuition too, when you get a clear intuitive lightning bolt, a piece of insight, and then people around you will tell you that you're crazy or tell
Right.
you like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, how could you know that? Like, how, you're not supposed to know that. That's like out of the box. That doesn't fit into the confines of what I think reality is. So I think this happens not just with reality shifts, but certainly with intuition. So I was seeing this shadow energy of Uranus that it also, as a negative expression, that it can bring us that experience of gaslighting, that we have this sudden shift or this sudden awareness that comes from outside the usual. But in that, we also experience people telling us that it can't be true.
Right. Yeah. A astrologer and friend that we had on the show 2 years ago, 2022. Yeah, time, 3 years ago. Um, Kathy Rose, she talks about like how you live the chart, right? So she's like, when she did a reading for me, which is how I got familiar with her. And she started and she was telling me all these things. She's like, my intuition is like, you're like done with a lot of these things. Like these are themes in your chart, but like my guess is like you're not you've worked through them. Like and I don't know how, and which was actually so and true. Hadn't always been so and true, but like definitely a lot of things, like the challenges put forth from my astrology had been things that I had transcended. But she would also talk about like any aspect, anything like, there's different ways to play it depending, and I think this is what you're saying, depending on the choices that you make, depending on your perspective at the current moment. So she's like, it's like, and she made the point too. She's like, you can't look at, someone's chart and say serial killer. You know what I mean? Like, there's many people that were born, have the same chart as, say, Ted Bundy, right? Like, but Ted Bundy lived his chart one way, and someone else could live their chart another way. And so they're the playing pieces for you to explore, but it's not the game is not predestined, right? It's not the game itself. It's just the raw material. So I don't know what you think about that. I think that's what I
Yeah,
hear
I
you
mean,
saying.
definitely. We have the choice on how we animate things. And then I'd go that next level and say, and how you animate those things has an effect on the wholeness of the universe.
For
And
sure.
when you play things one particular way, you're offering that up to the
Yeah.
planets that sit above us. So if we think about that Uranus example, if you stick with your intuition and you go with, well, listen, the authentic choice for me is to follow my intuition and to know that this is true, you're sending a truth signal up into the universe, and it's like you're sending a little sparkle of light up to that planet, and then that planet gets to be brighter and lighter, and it gets to lighten more people up with that same light of truth.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful way of thinking about it, my friend. I love that. All right. As we start to wind down, I ask everybody on the show, how do you experience your intuition?
Mm. It comes in many different flavors and ways, to be honest. But I'd say the one where it comes most deeply for me is a sense of knowing, where I just feel it and I know it. And sometimes I even get that as I'm observing myself saying or doing something. That
Oh,
I will see myself saying something or writing something, and then I'll just think, wow, well, that just came out. Isn't that cool? So it tends to just spill out from me.
that's great that you recognize like what's the intuition, because I think a lot of people have that experience and they don't give credit where credit's due because they haven't learned to. And I think that when we do and we go, "Oh, that's my intuition," then we can free ourselves up to use it more.
Yeah, absolutely. It is just this wonderful antenna. And then there are more refined uses too. If I want to tune into my intuition about a particular topic or about a particular thing, that feels like a different exercise to me. So there's more that receptive intuition, and then there's maybe that more focused, conscious choice to use the
Right.
intuition.
Yeah. But I think even when we focus it, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, there's always that moment of surrender. Like you
Hmm.
have to be in that space of not knowing. So when I first started doing this work, like I didn't like specific questions because, I could be wrong. And that was really scary. So I would want people, like, let's just see what the guides have to say, right? I could still the mind and see what came through. And then I remember, and this is many years later, but talking to someone early on the show, and she was talking about intuition on demand. I was like, what's that? But those are those moments where you do have a question, you do have a query, and you want to tune into that. And it may seem like a different experience, but it's really not. It's just about learning to set the stage, then set the intention, then clear the mind, and then let it arise. And I think what can sometimes make that more difficult for people, not always. I've seen people have, some things yeah, everyone's different about what comes more easily for them. But I think sometimes when we have a focused question, we just have more attachment. So it's harder to go into that space of not knowing. And you have to release the need to know with your mind so that you can know with your soul. Like those two things will not coexist in the same space. You always have to clear the mind for the intuition to flow. And then, you may use the mind to communicate or to understand or to explain. But if you have those mind based attachments, when you're asking a question, it will slow down the answer and your ability to clearly receive.
Yeah, most certainly. You got to stay open.
Yeah.
And it's that curiosity. And as an astrologer, I mean, well, I guess across all of my work, just that checking of,
Yeah.
okay, well, this is what I'm seeing, or this is what seems to be showing up for me. How is this relevant for you? And that trust, that deep
Yeah.
trust in, well, there's something in what I'm seeing, or there's something that's here, and I'm just going to present it and trust that it will resonate how it resonates. So I appreciate that way of thinking of it. And I think
Yeah.
for me, this more receptive intuition is just things that happen, those little Easter eggs, the delights where I
Yeah.
suddenly become aware of something where I wasn't
Yeah.
knowingly asking a question.
Yeah. Yeah. And you probably were on some level asking that
I
question,
probably was. My energy
right?
was, but I
Yeah.
don't know if
On
I was
some,
consciously aware that I was
exactly.
asking it.
But those are the best gifts. Those are the best gifts. Those moments where I didn't even know I was asking for it. And here it is.
Yes, amen.
Yes, 1,000%. All right. Anything else before we wind this one down? This has been a great conversation. I think a lot of people are going to benefit and want to work with you and learn more about your magic. Actually, let's do that. Tell people some of the things that you offer and how they can find you, and then we can do closing words.
Yeah, so you can check out my website on truthtakestime.com. I work with people in doing astrology consultations. I do alignment work, so energy clearings, and I also do alchemy. I know you mentioned alchemist is one of your favorite words,
Yeah,
and
we
this
didn't
is
talk about that.
yeah. Well, and alchemy to me is that recognizing the cosmic patterns, recognizing our energy, and bringing ourselves into a place of greater choice so that we can create the lives we want to live. So I do alchemy work where I take all of my abilities and I bring them together to help people deeply connect with their sense of purpose, with the possibilities that lay before them, and then to work together over a longer period of time to really see and experience that change.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And how do people find you if they want to do any of these things?
So my website is truthtakestime.com.
Okay.
And I also, you mentioned I write. So I write
Yes.
weekly on Substack. So that's just Truth Takes Time on Substack. I think it's truthtakestime.substack.com. So those are free weekly writings for people to connect with. And you can also subscribe if you want to join and do monthly energy retreats. So I'm doing retreats every time the sun changes signs to help us connect with that solar energy, help us connect with the stellar background, get to know the sign, get to know astrology. I'm a big proponent of learning astrology live. So, learning about things as they're happening. So, I also run workshops and events that are usually tied to celestial events that are happening now. Because for me, if you can feel it now, that really is astrology, feeling it, feeling that connection, living with it.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. All right. Any parting words before we wind this one down?
Just tremendous gratitude. It's been such a treat to speak with you. And I love that sunflower behind you.
Thank you. That is my special connection with the sun. And it was given to me when I first started doing my work as my brand logo. And it's stayed with me. So
Oh my gosh.
thank you
Well,
for
cheers to the
noticing
sun.
her. I know. Yeah. I think I am a sunflower.
I believe it.
I'm always looking for my sunny day. Patrick, this was so much fun. I'm glad we connected. I'm so lucky and blessed to get to do what I get to do and connect with people like you. And it is so fun. And I'm so grateful. And I'm so grateful to all of you guys out there because I say it every time because I mean it. Because of you, I get to do this and I like doing this. And I think you like it when I do it too. And know you guys will get a lot out of this one and sending out so much love to all of you. And namaste.